Excellent. It's a pleasure to see you today. We're in the month of June, 3 days into the month of June of the year 2026, after the birth of Jesus Christ. May he rest in peace, who was crucified. Now, we've been talking about, well, it's important. The Gregorian calendar has this built into our day-to-day perception of things. And we've been talking about large frames of perception. We've been talking about the world systems approach that you've so well defined, and I want to say structured. I want to say the word structured. You've structured a tool for our understanding of where we are in the world and why we move as collectives in the world. And you've zoomed in with the world systems analysis approach that you've shared with us. You've zoomed in on the a priori, on the factors, the vectors, the constants that we can influence, but that we don't think about much because we exist within those framing constants. And it's interesting for me to be a participant on Dystopia Unmasked in this conversation, because with your very soft-spoken approach, you have actually put in question one of the most fundamental, one of the most rigid and fundamental pillars of standard academic political science, or the social sciences in general, which is refrain from deterministic variables. Refrain from introducing determinism into your academic discourse. And I find it fascinating to look at politics and to look at social anthropology through space and time, not from the vantage points of actors interpreting and projecting why they are where they are and why they want to go where they're going, but to look at it from the vantage points of their contextual presets. I'm talking about mountains. I'm talking about glaciers. I'm talking about ocean currents. I'm talking about something that I never thought about in my life, I have to tell you. Perhaps the last time I must have been 15. Thinking about ocean geology, oceanic geology, and the impact those kinds of macro historical geological shifts and tectonic movements has on our day-to-day decision makers' thought patterns. So there's somebody in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs currently cooperating with somebody in the military department in order to know how many bombs and how many ships and how many planes they're going to send into the theater at Hormuz. And all of that is a reaction to the geological antecedents to this moment in time.
Yeah.
And this is not part of sociology. This is not part of political science. And it has a deterministic impact on the preset, as a preset of what humans can do, and how the terrain, how the theater of operations is constructed. Determinism in social sciences does have a place. You just have to know what that place is. And I feel like in the past 6 sessions, you've taken us to that. Well, this being the 6th, you've taken us through that. And it's done something to me. I wonder what it's done to the audience. It's made me a little a little less, uh, a little less full of myself.
Mm.
It's made me a little more humble as a human being.
Mm.
I'm just, we're so obsessed with UN resolutions and resolutions in Parliament and democratic justification or the lack thereof. The collective. What do they say? Politics is the allocation of resources.
Mhm.
Is the allocation of the domain of allocation of resources. And here we are saying that politics is to do within a framework that exists of nature what we can,
Well,
determined by the antecedent structure.
yeah. Well, I mean, because it'd be interesting to just give some context because of how I got there,
Mm,
which will show you why a word like deterministic will never appear in my vocabulary,
mm-hmm,
right? Not in my political vocabulary,
mm-hmm,
and because I began to realize that our grasp of the political was no longer based upon the the um the realities on the ground in our lands, but had first to be seen through an ideological prism which was foreign to the situation for it for its categories to become legible. Right. So what do I mean? It means that you walk into a kitchen and you can only see the things that the book tells you you can see. Anything else is not valid, right? So basically, what you have to do is you have to take your ingredients that are there and you have to discard them because none of them are civilized ingredients. Because what is civilized is here, what is political is here. Okay. And so began to feel that we really had to rethink not politics, but the political from the ground up. Okay. So I'm not thinking politics, but I'm thinking um, the I'm thinking how do you rethink the political so that people can actually think politically. Okay, and so that's what I've done. So when I started this with with psychopolitics because I I began to think that that the politics I was seeing was so deeply psychological that I could explain it by that. But as I went on, I really had to go beyond that psychopolitical framing. Right. So the world systems grammar emerged from me stepping beyond the psychopolitical framing. So how do you understand the material from the ground up? Okay. And discover the categories that it reveals and the conclusions and follow it through to the conclusions, which for me were fresh. Okay. And and just making my way through like that. So um the whole point, as I'm saying, the point was for people to be able to think politically. Okay. Because also of the methodology of enclosure has been okay, if you're going to talk about this, you need to, in order for the ingredients to be seen, you got to know how to spell this man's name. And that's 4 letters. It's called Marx. Right. 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 And then there's this other one that you can't, there's no single person, but if you invoke the name of somebody like Adam Smith, right? It's often completely against what Adam Smith said. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Um, then then that thing can have legitimacy. And I was getting, no. We need to be able to think. We're not thinking, right? We're taking categories off the shelf. and
Mm-hmm.
trying to force our situation into that. So that's what I was doing. So then I ended up with three disciplined systems for looking at the political. So one is psychopolitical symbolics is where I started. I'm now working at getting it into a framework. Um, because that's where I started, and often the place that you start is where you make the most mistakes, and that's the blessing of a journey, right? The mistakes at the beginning are are more naive than the ones at the end, and so often they are the most generative. Um, and then I came up with the world system framework, and the world system framework looks at material infrastructure and flows, um, and relations between states, right? Or formations and it looks at how, I mean, because I did an article on the petrodollar, which
But
is
you're being generous. You said relations between states. The method is actually much more, even more stripped down. Wouldn't you speak of nodes at that moment
I
inside
speak
the
of
method?
I speak of nodes, yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to make life easy for people.
Okay. Okay.
um, yeah. Okay. So, and then the next one I have is called the reproduction viability framework, which is how do states, which is allows you to assess the viability of a polity, right? And how it's reproducing itself and through what it does so. Okay. And if you notice, there's no mention of people, or so, they come at the end, because when the container, etc., is there, that's that it's like you're talking about the driver, but you haven't spoken about, is he driving a car, a truck, a tank, or a plane?
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
all of those give very different possibilities. Yeah,
Absolutely. The actor centricity of analysis sort of, and this is why I mentioned it earlier. I said it humbles me because essentially there's an actor centricity to mainstream social sciences, and the actor can be, depending on the level at which you are, an individual, can even be what happens within an individual, or it can be mega structures. uh,
yeah,
and I feel like that's where you situated the analysis, and then the actor, the intentional, the intention driven actor becomes secondary. uh
yeah. The intention-driven actor walks onto the stage.
yes, walks onto the
They walk
stage,
onto the
that's it.
stage. So if you don't understand the stage, you don't understand where the stage is situated, you're gonna think that this actor that steps on made the stage, right? And often you'll find he don't even understand where the stage was, right? He
Yes,
think he thinks that what he can see with the spotlight is the stage. The whole point is here is to step back to see the stage, to see the theater, and understand how the theater is able to stand, right? And when it is at risk, and then you can come back, and then the actor on the stage begins to make sense. The next thing, often the pattern of behavior of the actor makes perfect sense once you have done that, right? Because they can't walk off the stage, right? The stage has an end, okay? And sound has its dynamics, so you can't do certain things from certain parts of the stage, right? Unless it's really well designed. Um, every stage will have its unique properties.
it's unique. The properties of the contextual property analysis, you could also call it that, right?
Yeah. So it was about doing that, and not only that, but I I'm not a positivist, right? Which is a philosophical position. So I don't. There's certain things I don't assume. Let me not go into the let me not go into a philosophical framing.
Just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit. Would be
But no,
interesting.
I'm not going to go into a strictly philosophical framing. I'm going to just define tell you what I'm doing.
Mm,
First of all, I had to remove this assumption of a privileged position outside of the system. So often we think about the system, that we can analyze the system because we imagine ourselves outside of it. Right? In my method, you're not allowed to do that. You have to recognize that you're embedded in it, and that and that your not only your biases and your upbringing and your vision changes what you can see. So it
hmm.
requires some epistemic humility about how you are embedded within the process. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there's no Archimedean outside position, right? So what's his name? The Cartesian guy, what's his name? And that little fellow, the one who lies down in his room, smokes a bit of weed, and then imagines that
Descartes.
Descartes. Yeah,
He did that. He did do that.
yeah,
He did do that. Yes.
yeah.
I wonder whether he knew that this is how he was going to be remembered.
But he's not remembered like that,
Well, we do.
except people who really know.
You know, when I came across that detail, I said, "Oh,
Yeah.
really?"
I mean, that that's not a problem. I mean, we just understand what he was doing, right?
Yeah,
So,
he was.
and again, and it gives you context. Okay,
It made me like him. It made me like him a little bit.
yeah. Well, yeah. I was already married, so I didn't have to worry about it. Sorry. Um, um. So, so that was one. The next one is that um, because you don't have a privileged position, you're not. You can't imagine yourself as seeing facts
Hmm.
which are truth. You are seeing from a particular positionality, and if you stand in front of something, you can't see the back of it, right? And if you stand at the back of it, you can't see the front.
Yes.
And the world's like that. So I take a hermeneutic approach, which means that I'm interpreting reality. So then there must be some, and people go, okay, well, where are you going to get to the truth? No, I'm not interested in getting to the truth.
Mm.
I'm, I'm interested in disciplining how I see. So the analyst has to discipline how they see because they're recognizing that they're interpretive, right? That
Yes.
you're not going to arrive at the absolute truth of anything. So you need to be very disciplined about how you see, right? And this is epistemic humility. Um,
Hmm.
and so what the discipline is that if I throw three analysts into the room with that discipline, they should see 90% of the same things. Okay. And that they should be able to identify how their positionalities and their pre-assumptions influence how they see. So as a method, it it can be quite destabilizing to your sense
Hmm.
of self.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's designed to be like that,
Yes.
right?
Because you know why also what happened to me in digging deeper into this world systems analysis approach as you've defined it, and made it systematic. I'll tell you, when I started reading it, my mindset was, as I've been trained to have it, all right, let me find the internal contradictions here. Let me find the internal insufficiencies here. Let me find the overlap claims or the category overlaps that shouldn't be by definition. And I didn't find them, so I was quickly convinced, oh, this is a very clean, very willed, very deliberate, and very intricate, uh, meticulously drafted set of concepts, terminologically, uh, speaking of the reality as it is without internal without sloppiness, because many concepts are thrown at the reader very often in social sciences without the rigor of cleaning up the limits of validity of the concepts. So
Well, I have to remember that I have to sit with Meticulous Prime every Wednesday for an hour.
well, but it's a pleasure to read new conceptual frameworks, but then what happens is, okay, look, have a look at the limit of validity
That
here.
that's exactly what I'm saying, right?
but but it
I have to
but
remember that I have to sit with this guy once a week, and so I better be damn meticulous.
and the thing is, it carries over. You see, this is where you often catch as theoreticians lacking, because they'll give you a definition of an aspect and it works wonderfully to explain behavior or explain mental attitudes or explain social dynamics. But when you take that definition within their own framework and you look at another concept, you realize that the limits of validity, not having not been clarified, of the first concept, which explains something well, it begins lacking on another facet of the same theater of analysis. And
I'm a disprover, right? I try to disprove my work.
right, and so after a little bit of reading and seeing, hey, Alex really, oh, no, he can't. This is 5 years' work at least. He just showed it to me this week, or back then. But this has been bubbling for at least 5 years, maybe 15. Who knows?
No,
And
that's been
then
that what world systems is the result of 30 years of research.
you see, it was because the concept. So I can only recommend to you, when Alex finally publishes it, please go and have a look, because it's, at least at my level of comprehension and analysis, and I did this professionally with some of the people
You you
cons-
you. I'm sorry, but you did this with one of the giants of the 20th century.
in the field of political theory. And
In
so,
the field of political theory, in the field of social sciences, right?
right,
The man
and
is a and the man is almost unparalleled, and many of the frameworks that you're talking about are derived are derived from interaction with him, right?
absolutely, it's
So,
true, it's true, it's true. It's Johann
as I say,
Galtung.
yeah, yeah. Give Jack
and
his Jack.
and you know I've benefited enormously from looking over his shoulder for 20 good years. No, well, a bit less, 18 years. I got the opportunity to look over his shoulder, and I learned a lot, because he was really, just as you do, um, what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? Heterodox. The word I'm looking for is heterodox, because I don't think he would have appreciated me using that word, but the point is, taking from a variety of disciplines, uh, whatever instruments a discipline has developed and designed that has proven its value in um, producing intersubjective accurate observations, and then
Hmm.
combine it with other instruments from other disciplines, and limitlessly. So that has sort of schooled me in understanding how you operate. And then in that, the instruments still have to maintain their validity, their scope of validity. So one thing that I was doing over those years was I was having to cope with because he wasn't as accessible. Many people who had things to criticize about his work would bring the stuff to me, and then I would sit with it and look whether the criticism was valid, whether the criticism required him to rethink. So I would sit with the stuff for about a week or two and look into his work. And then if I found something to be poignant, I'd go to him and I say, Johan, it looks like somebody's right about this. And it looks like it limits the validity of what you're saying. And then he'd look at it and either ad- uh, embrace the new angle, or he would look at it and say, oh, this fellow is missing out this or that in order for it to be coherent.
But he didn't attack the messenger.
No, no, no. No. And oh, I have an anecdote if I can share it. So within the first 14 days of when I started working with him in the summer of '06, something happened. I was invited to a conference in Austria where he was sort of invited to preside over the proceedings of that conference. And he would give a lecture, and then all the other aspiring academics would then present their work, and it was expected of him to comment on every presentation, and then there would be a dialogue conversation. I don't exactly remember this moment as I'm recalling it, what the issue was, but he spoke, and all of us sitting in the audience looked at each other thinking, hold on, that can't be that can't be correct. He made some mistake as he was speaking. So at the end of that hour, I went to his colleague with whom he had been working for 20, 30 years, which was Professor Fisher. And I said to Professor Fisher, in the audience, we kind of noticed that he either misspoke or made a categorical error. And I'd like to talk to him about it during the break so that he can fix it when he comes back. Mr. Fisher said, You you want to correct him? You want to correct him? He's presiding over the session. You cannot do that. I had been working with Johan for 14 days. And Mr. Fisher, Dr. Fisher, who'd been working with Galtung for 30 years, said that. Those were and then I had a half an hour left in my break. It was the most difficult half hour of my life. Because I said to myself, where is this? What is this? I'm supposed to be an academic. Is an academic speaking? He makes a category error, and the other academic is telling me not to tell him. I'm in the wrong place. I cannot stay here. This this is not the game I enrolled in. I'm and so this man telling me not to mention, not to address that mistake. I had all types of, I'm feeling it again. You know, I felt uneasy. I can't be here. I can't. What is this? It's some kind of theater group. I'm not. So when the next session began, I raised my hand and I addressed it to Galtung, and he said, "Is that so? Did I say that? Hold on. I'll have to think about it. Allow me to take note of this. I'll come back to you after the next break." After the next break, he came in, and his first words were, "I have to apologize to the congregation. I made a mistake, and this was the mistake I made, and this is what I intended to say. Forgive me for misspeaking." And he corrected himself in public. That's when I knew I can hang with this guy.
Yeah, you're in the right place.
I'm in the right place because he was already in his 70s, and he had this authority, and his own colleague with a doctorate title and a professor title said, no, 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 we don't contradict him. And I said to myself, that's a sect. That's a, this is a,
So,
yeah,
so
yeah.
when I said that I have to come for Wednesdays
Mm.
and be on point, that's what I'm talking about. I know I know what's coming my way.
But I'll ask politely. I'll ask politely. Do you intend to say it this way? Because if you say it this way, there's this and that follow that you don't. The other concept you present does not, live up to this
That that's my
concept.
point. That's my point precisely.
right? And I saw that. I saw that. So I can only recommend that you dive in. Now, I have to tell you that I do that as a reflex, and I always kind of I feel bad about having that reflex, but I feel like this is the
Okay,
German indoctrination.
but it's been useful. I think no, I think that's your reflex.
It's the
I,
German
I think
indoctrination.
no, I think the German would have made it worse, but not.
Uh, uh,
But I think it was there already. And,
Find the
and in my
flaw.
conversations with you, I hear evidence of its existence in your early childhood. So
Okay.
I'm sorry to disappoint you. You can't blame that on anybody.
But I personally don't like that character trait.
You're just a meticulous bastard. That's all.
But the thing is, if anytime somebody speaks or somebody writes something, you're looking for the incompatibility within which is said or within which is presented, or the inconsistency within that which is said. It's taken me many years to realize that's a methodological inclination, but don't disqualify people based on, you know, conceptual
Okay.
inaccuracies.
Let me put it this way.
Mm,
I have I've been okay. So because I want to step back forward,
mm,
I think I've been very fortunate
mm,
that at this point of
mm,
my development, that I was provided with that kind of friction, this kind of friction,
mm,
right?
mm,
And it really depends upon what you want. And I'm saying that because you have to be very careful about who you keep company with and what,
mm, mm, mm,
right?
mm.
Because you bring certain things to the table that can only be appreciated by someone who actually has an ambition for something that is bigger than their reputation.
Mm.
Okay? Because that interaction is going to challenge them in ways. And that is a and that for some people is going to be a curse. So you want to choose the ones to whom it is a blessing.
This is so important. It's so important because what I realized now in the years with a colleague a bit younger than me who joined the team, he taught me the following lesson. He says he he was working with us, and after a while he started asking strange questions because he said, "Why do you always go back to him to explore something that you might have found out to be inaccurate or insufficient in his work?" I said, "But that's the point of so why do you ask me that?" He said, "Because that's how you could make a career for yourself." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "But if you find inaccuracies, you could publish them. His work is accepted, his work is seminal, his work is published, and if you can attack somebody who's already standing, you make a name for yourself or some." I said, "But that's not the point. That's the point is this guy has been developing
Thank
things,
you. I should be doing that maybe.
you know? You're supposed to find a flaw and then go public with the flaw so that you gain from diminishing someone's but that has nothing to do with the work.
Okay, so this is what you call magnanimity. So um
It
and
has
and
nothing to do with the
and
work.
so these are character traits. Okay,
Mm.
so I'm not going to go there because
It's another issue. It's
it's
another
another.
issue.
Okay, so we've just more or less finished going through the grammar of the world system.
Mm.
Billy Bumbo has questions, and I'm going to say to you that I gave you this so you can think. I will respond to your thinking, right? But the
Mm.
point is that we must think, and yeah, if
But I
everyone
need
took
your help
that
now. I need your
particular
help.
thing, hmm?
Let me ask you something that's been working at me for a while. And it's the
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing that works at you where you don't really know how to relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
So the 5 sessions that we had, the readings I did in preparation and after that, it left me dispirited, at an angle and in a place where I had been drawing energy from to engage with geopolitics every day. It left me dispirited because the purpose of what we are doing in our human bubbles suddenly fades into some kind of insignificance, because you see that the Hormuz geology is going to be there unless we start nuking the place and reshaping at the
Even if you nuke
geological.
it, you don't move that.
No, but unless we start as a species to operate at the geological level in terms of impact. We could blow away a mountain. We could blow
Yeah,
broaden
but
the
these. But what I'm saying is that these structures are even faster than that,
vaster.
right?
So
So,
what?
like that kind of imagination,
Mm-hmm.
you have to then you just realize you have to put it aside,
Mm.
right?
Well, but at the end of the day, it leaves you feeling very little. I feel
Precisely what we are.
and then and then I've been struggling with this. I don't know if anyone else in the audience has been going through this, where I begin thinking, what's the point? What is the point? What is the
Okay.
point? What is the point?
Well,
How do I get?
well, let me explain something to you.
And I'm
If
suppressing that, I'm
if you
suppressing it.
if you've been educated
Hmm.
in a Western political institution,
Hmm.
you're educated for evangelism, right?
Powerfully true.
Right.
Powerfully true.
You're educated to go and spread the gospel, or to assess adherence to the gospel,
Yes.
or to
Yes.
declare.
In my case, even to go back where I came from and teach my people to apply this, because otherwise they will not get the salvatory benefits of Western ingenuity.
So, so there's a certain kind of psychological structure that results out of that, out of
Mm,
which we can speak.
mm,
So it structures what you desire politically,
mm-hmm,
a- and how you desire to be recognized politically.
mm-hmm.
Now, this method collapses all that. So it's like you have to then relearn how you engage with the political. But at this point, you have a chance to engage with the political, not as a not as an inscribed instrument of a machine, right? Which assigns you your salvatory positionality.
Yes. And Alex, this is we have to touch on this because it's part and parcel of the work you've presented here, because what it does is it confronts you with and offers you the opportunity to think afresh. But in so doing, you exclude yourself from paradigmatic schools. You find out you're swimming by yourself. And you find out talking to the school. I'm using the fish school of fish, sort of, they swim together, they flock together. You belong to a peer group. As an academic, suddenly you find yourself, after having acquired the tools of literacy in your discipline. There is levels of literacy in your discipline. After acquiring those tools, suddenly you find those tools to be what they are, the product of a particular school, of a particular era. And that era is involved in a stream of um, survival coordination efforts that began long before the school even was conceived, long before the school was established. Many other schools have contended with the um, survival coordination efforts of your species, and the survival coordination efforts are subject to the surrounding contextual geology, geography, climatology, and the flux of biota through these rigid parameters. And suddenly here you are, you have a title, you have income, you have publications. People look towards you and look at you. You're just a, a you're just a whisper in time. You're just a whisper in a short era of survival coordination efforts, in a string of series of survival coordination efforts adapted more or less well to the contextual parameters.
It's really interesting. I right now, because the work's really intense.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been writing blues songs. Right?
Blues,
Blues. It's right.
blues.
Blues, yeah. And because it's so different from that analytical approach which I have, which I'm making, I have to immerse myself into, kind of really reconnects me to
Blues.
blues, yeah. Feeling, positionalities, how you see from the position, because blues is really about that, right? Blues condenses the matter and puts you in that, you have you have to speak from that position, and where it puts you in, and so that people can recognize it
Mm-hmm.
and they join you in that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the lines I have that finishes a particular song says, resplendent for a day and a night. Yeah.
Resplendent for a day and a night.
Yeah, it's just talking about beauty.
Beauty.
Right. So the thing about it is that when you're in something, it looks like you have to imagine it's going to last forever.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But the moment that you realize that it's transient, that gives perspective. And when one of the things about our civilization is its imagination, or its desire for impermanence,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's that when you look at the Star Trek series, etc. It's what you're seeing manifested is this desire for impermanence. Yeah, which is a rebellion against finitude. So finitude is death, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because this is Quranic verse which could فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ. So where are you going, right? But you know that in that question is كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ, that every self must taste death,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the thing about so so a relationship with finitude gives you perspective. And in this case, not only finitude, but if you take your position in the broader geological, meteorological, etc., history of where we are less than a breath. And I think that's really important for a politics that sees itself tasked with taking care of the terrain which we share with not only human beings of the future and of the past, because our past people are buried in the earth. We have a responsibility to care for the place that holds them. And and for those that will come. But we don't only share; we share this earth with fish, with birds, with insects, with microbes. Right? We share it ourselves. We're made up of, you know, there's probably more um, microbial biomass or diversity within us than
Mhm.
there is. Because we're talking. Oh, I was going to say human cell diversity. No, but that's part of the human.
That's one of the most fascinating things, right? 38 trillion cells and 3 to 4 bacterial populations on every cell. Uh, what are we doing?
Without which we cannot live,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
But also viruses, right, and
Hmm.
phages.
Hmm.
No, we're rich. You know, I am a world,
Hmm. Yes.
right? Uh,
Yes.
Allah made
There's
a
stuff
world,
going on.
and I'm part of a world,
Mhm.
and everybody is a universe. And so this, what is how this brings another kind of orientation to the political. That's the point. That's precisely the point. And
Hold on. I just went to check just so that I don't because this is outside of my payload, my pay grade. It says the human body is home to roughly 38 trillion bacterial cells. Modern research shows these microscopic passengers slightly outnumber our own human cells, which total around 30 to 36 trillion cells. Together, these bacteria form a complex ecosystem known as our microbiome.
yeah,
So the stuff is humbling.
yeah,
It's just
and so yeah,
humbling.
so and so I needed I needed a way beyond enlightenment enclosure.
Mm. Enlightenment's enclosure.
Yeah, because the Enlightenment project enclosed the political um, in a way, and so you get, I mean, so that to be political, then there are only there are only certain valid political religions.
And the
And
contradictions.
I
So
want to stop there. I don't want to
I know it
because
could take us
that space gets very religious, right? And I don't in the sense, and religious in a particular sense, right?
and this is something that right now, this is why Dystopia Unmasked really is a good home for people who notice the contradictions and the rate of increase in irreconcilable logical contradictions within that enclosure. The rate at which the contradictions are increasing within that enclosure in conceptually and practically is mind-boggling. And the more you hold on to, like me, when I'm in the enclosure, I'm earning a living with this, and you hold on to it, and you find one contradiction, and you look for others who see it, and you speak to them. Hey, we're saying, as an example, we cannot cooperate in no way, form, or fashion with Russia because they're an authoritarian political system, and they murder their journalists, and they reduce the freedom of expression of their population, and therefore they must be shunned, they must be ostracized from polite political conversation, and cooperative measures must be interrupted, they must be um sanctioned, they must be excluded, they must be impoverished, they must. And then the
Yeah.
US abducts Maduro. And then the US kills these people on boats outside of legal procedure. The, 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 the I mean,
And
these
it
are just
forms ice.
recent. Pardon me?
And it forms ice.
And these are just recent. These are just recent on the moment. So with one hand, I'll tell you, don't talk to Russia because they stink in terms of political liberties, and then I'm doing all this, and then I'm doing all that, and then you're not allowed to say anything. Sorry, pardon me. Yes.
Malcolm X was about
Mm.
to take the United States to the UN
For the genocide.
for genocide.
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
Malcolm X ended up dead, and it has been by release files. There's proof that there's state involvement.
Yes.
Now, if we were to judge the United States by its recent history
Profess.
and its positions and the continuity of some of those matters, because the 2008 crisis affected ethnic minorities, in particular black ones, more than in harsher ways,
Yep.
based upon the policies that persist from the American apartheid era, right? I don't call it Jim Crow; it's apartheid.
Mhm.
It wants to call it Jim Crow because it doesn't want to call it apartheid, but that's what it
Mhm.
is,
That's what it was.
right? Um, we call it different things in different places, but we need to find some categories that describe it right consistently
Mhm.
right across
Yes.
right. Um, Apartheid was part of European governance of colonial life until often the 1960s in the British colonial.
Mm.
In Australia until after the 1970s.
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm. Yes.
but so my thing is that it's I'm not really interested. You'll notice I'm not interested in saying this one's evil or that one's. I'm interested in the capacity to have a disciplined ability to look. And because Robert Romano is saying, okay, it's hard to stay influenced when from childhood everyone feels the need to teach you ABC 1, 2, 3. But what you truly need is to learn to see things how they really are. Okay, so let me say, I agree with the first half of what you said.
Mhm.
The second half, let me just kill this one. Yeah. The second bit, I have a caution, is that you're always going to see things from positionality. So you
Mm.
cannot see things as they truly are. You will never be able to see truth as true. That is the domain of one being. Okay? Um, because you have to be able to see the thing from inside of it and outside of it. And that's not possible for a bounded an in time creature, right? In time, in space creature.
Mhm.
So my position is post foundationalist. You have to really give up the imagination that you're going to arrive at the absolute truth of something.
Mhm.
You're going to say, you say, this is how I see it. And in my disciplined analysis of how I've seen it, this is what I see.
And you can
This is
verify
what
the discipline.
and this is what I can say about this phenomenon,
Mhm.
right? This is what I can safely say, right? And I can say that if you're saying that, I want to understand how you can say that with that certainty. That's
Mhm.
all I can give you, nothing else.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Yes. No, but this is fundamental and it's important. But again, I'm going to need your help for this in a sense that how do you cope with the isolation that comes with this rigor? Because there you are talking to people about you're talking with people about the same methodologies, and suddenly you add a touch or a vantage point on those things that makes them turn around and look at you as an outsider because you're looking at the full picture, including our own. Um,
You, look, this is for people who are able to make the choice that you either can you can either belong to a kabuki theater or you can get off the stage. Getting off the stage has a price. Being on the
mhm,
stage has a price.
mm.
I I can't I can't um I can't I'm not here to solve your social issues.
No, but this is heavy, Alex. This is very heavy. Both have a price. Being involved has a price, and most people around me are educated enough to see that they're paying a price, but they're, for some reason, not willing to take the step
They
off
can, they
the
can,
stage.
they can take some counseling. That's it. That's what people do. They go get some counseling. Or they go on a holiday or um,
They stack up income and retire and try to live the
earn
last 10 years
try and
beautifully.
forget. Yeah. Try and forget. But they don't forget. Yeah.
I mean, let's not forget, we are in the context of things that affect us emotionally and psychologically. For those of us who do not close themselves to the reality of
Yeah.
the cruelty that we've been exposed to, um, since, in my case, since Iraq, I woke up to the cruelty of things really.
Uh, well, I'm afraid I grew up seeing it pretty close. I was either fortunate or unfortunate to be real close to how that stuff happened. And I think Meticulous has gone. I have to wait for him to join again. Um, yeah, he's got some connectivity issues. Yeah. Um, and if you're in that kind of situation, what often ends up happening is that you end up having to drown your doubts and your sorrows, right? Yeah, and 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 you do so with whiskey or something else. Um, but there's no, don't imagine that it doesn't have a price. It has a price. Okay, so until Meticulous comes back, I'm going to explain to you. Um, okay, let me answer this. Flawed, very painful to be aware, but asleep to be asleep brings disturbed dreams that keep confusion so close that one's life feels a mess. Yeah, we have to understand. We really have to recognize the price, and often what happens is that that price gets put into a container which pathologizes it. So what happens is that you're treated as ill for recognizing that, right? And it's a classic technique in which you begin to do that, and so there's a problem with you because you're saying this, and everybody else is saying that. So how could you say whatever? How could you disagree with everybody? But then suddenly, when more and more people start saying that, it's okay, right? So then the category is not insight, right? The category is conformance. Yeah, yeah. You have to just conform, and but you have to conform whilst pretending that you're rational and you're rational and logical. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Salim, whether you're on the stage or off the stage, you're alone with him, right? That's it. Meticulous, can you hear us now? I can't hear you. Yeah. So yeah, this is a time that requires a particular kind of courage. Right? It requires a particular kind of courage. I'll invite him again. Okay, and yeah, if you've got questions, I'll take them. But what I want to do also is to tell you where I'm planning to go. Here he is. Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. My charger wasn't fully inserted, so I didn't
Oh,
realize my battery was dying. I'm sorry.
I was wondering if I had offended you.
Oh no, not at all. No, no, but
Just
what?
knowing how offensive I am, having told you that there's no way out, I can't help you.
No, no, no. But but it's difficult. I wonder how far you got. I don't want to interrupt.
No, that's it. I mean, uh, um, I I pay. I have in order to maintain this kind of work. I've paid an immense price. Right. I have friends who are professors who used to be my friend.
Who used to be?
Yeah, they just don't. Just don't encourage. They don't interact with me at all.
Well, you see, it's problematic. It's very, very problematic. There's so many things happening at the same time. And I wanted to share when I was interrupted that once you go through this, I mean, there's so many. So, how do you, for example, relate to the fact that, because it's in your work, inside Dystopia Unmasked, hundreds of articles, and out of these articles, you can see that the author of these articles has a problem with genocide. It bothers you. It disturbs you. It does something to you. But the way you write about it is not sort of in an emotional outpouring of indignation. If that's what people are looking for, they won't find that. But what they'll find is you des- describing the central role, the dehumanization of masses has in the dominant political establishment, the normalcy of of human expendability. You have an issue with that, but you don't write about it in sort of like indignated finger pointing way. You just sort of account for it. You account for it, and then what your work has done for me, and I hope for others too, is to show that aside from it being horrifying and mirror neurons activating and the suffering could pass over to you as you watch these things, the truth about that stuff happening is that the machine is built to do that. The machine is built to do that. And then, as an academic in political sciences, you've been indoctrinated to see human rights, rule of law, democracy, and then every year around March, for the past 40 years, the West goes and bombs something, bombs somebody, just bomb them to rectify them, to fix them. We'll bomb them to fix them. We'll kill them to fix them. And it keeps going on and on and on and on and on. And what your work does is it tells the reader, hey, as life goes on, the remainder of your life expectancy, this is what the machine is going to do. Because that's what the machine has been doing. And that's what the machine was set up to do. Okay. So the idea passed on through the discipline of social sciences, political science, that this is a deviation from standard operating procedure. This is an anomaly. This is a mistake. This is a mishap. When does a regularly occurring mishap become what it actually is, which is part of the configuration of the polity as it's set up? So what you do is you kind of do away with all of the gesticulatory justifications, and you say, hold on a second, the machine is built this way. Uh, the genocide is not a mistake. It's not a mishap. The Abu Ghraib is not a mishap. what they're doing in Israeli prisons, raping people with dogs. It's not a mishap. These th- and then of course professors don't want to talk to you because they are part of what is upholding this illusion of that being an anomaly. It's not an anomaly, it's part of the system.
Yeah.
And how does one cope with this how do you cope with telling things as they are, and the crowd basically is the hemlock situation. You call things as they are, and then you're offered a hemlock
Look,
cup.
look, I'm not doing what Socrates did, right? Socrates wanted to be in the marketplace, talking about it, going to see Aristophanes' plays, and laughing at himself, at Aristophanes himself, not realizing that Aristophanes was killing him.
Mm, mm.
I'm not doing that. Okay,
Oh,
I'm
but
not
you are
inter-
corrupting the youth. You are corrupting the youth. I'm referring to myself as youth here.
yeah, no, no, I got what you're saying. Okay, and okay, so for me, it is that I am the descendant of people who cannot afford to have too many illusions. At least I can't. Because what I've seen is that those illusions have often resulted in 100 years, very little change.
Mm,
Okay. Um, and that offends people when you say that. But I'm not, I don't want to get involved in that. I just want to look. For me, I'm just going to look. Right. Now, if you want to talk to me, fine. If you don't want to talk to me, well, there are other people you can talk to. Right. If you want to socialize with me, fine. Just don't get in the way of my work.
mm,
You know, um, and um, and if you don't want to, then fine. I've got things to do. You've got things to do. Good luck. Right. But I'm not here. I'm not here for that.
mm,
Right. I mean, ultimately, I'm going to die. I have my finitude, and I, I am certain that I'm going to be questioned about what I have done in the world,
mm,
or whatever consciousness I have is going to reflect upon what I did in the world, and I need that to be as comfortable as I can make it by having some integrity. Okay.
mm.
Um, and yeah, you know what? One of the things you're seeing in Gaza is that they need to prevent the counting of the dead.
Oh yes.
The stability that will result in the counting of the dead must be deferred. And and so ultimately it lodges the system into that if there's the extermination of those people, then there's nobody to count. There's no point. They just bury it. Yeah. But that's the kind of machine that we're dealing with. And you heard Mertz, right? That's the machine,
That's the dirty work.
right? That is the machine.
Just 2 days ago, just to underscore what you're saying, 2 days ago, I came across something I had never heard of before, which is on one of the Caribbean islands. There's a stretch where tourists like to go, and the ocean is turquoise, and it's beautiful, mild, and it's not deep, and there are no kinds of crustacean creatures with these needles that poison you and things. So it's just pristine paradise. And so Europeans especially like to go on that beach and lay there And because of the ocean taking in more and more land, there's been an erosion of that beach. And suddenly, for the past few years, bones of mass grave sites of enslaved sugarcane workers uh, are showing up. And it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bones showing up on the beach, which used to be further inland, where these people were buried and therefore unaccounted for historiographically. And now there you are laying on your beach beautifully, your paid vacation, all inclusive, and you get entangled in the roots of a coconut tree, only to find out it wasn't just roots of coconut trees, it was also bones of buried slaves. Ah, and so this reminded me of this encounter in
Let me tell you something about my childhood.
Mhm.
I grew up when I moved to a city called Georgetown, which is the capital of Guyana,
Mm.
capital city. I lived in a house which was kind of the presidential palace was kind of diagonally over that way. The British ambassador's residence was here. The British embassy was over there. It was one of those big old colonial houses in one of the oldest parts of the city, and one of the most beautiful. And so I lived in this house, and so there were tennis courts at the back, lovely lawns. And then I came across the slave quarters,
Mm-hmm.
which still had the chains in it. Okay.
Mm.
Now, that place was such a place of despair that my gardener would not let me go in there on my own.
Mm.
Right. He would, he kind of felt instinctively that he had to guard me from that. Right. And at times he would collar me and take me out.
Mm.
Right. Just no, you're not staying in there on your own. Right. This is not a place that good things happened, and its energy is not good. But no, the house was haunted as hell. The Dutchman that had built it his tomb was on the doorstep. They destroyed it. They destroyed it and they built a hotel on top of it. Um, and and not even a nice one. um, and so I had to really make sense because basically what it did for me is that the history of this place with this incredible beauty, right? Um, the 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 the, the utter because you can imagine what the kinds of conversations that I was privy to at that point were, because they were about the future of this state, and the challenges that they faced. Right, so I was able to sit and listen, and 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 the people who were having those were particularly well read,
Mm.
and and they were from a class that had time and resources to think about it. So that was the place of my education, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what for me it was that they would often find ways of dissociating from that history. I had to find ways of embracing it in a manner that did not destroy me. And there's a Guyanese writer, who really helped me to do that. His name is Edgar Mittelholzer.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think this is one of the most. I think that for people who want to be able to think politically and to be able to embrace the 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 contradictions, often brutal contradictions of our history, that mental health is an important um, touch point to do so without bitterness and that kind of thing. Yeah. Sorry, I have to take this. Assalamualaikum. Yeah. I've got some issues. I'm on a live. Yeah. So I'll talk to you later. Yeah. Sorry.
I, I note that you've qualified me as some issues.
No. It's not. That wasn't you. There was. It was a question about something else. Uh, okay. So I think. I think these are important things, right? Because if not, the most obvious thing that I think everybody can see is that they do not in Gaza, they cannot afford the count. The United States can't afford the count. The Europeans can't afford the count. Yeah. Yeah. But Robert Romano, yeah, Kariakou. But it's not just Kariakou. Right? That's what that taught me. That taught me that our the beauty of what we had was built on blood and bones, scarcely below the surface.
Yes.
Yeah, scarcely below the surface,
Mm.
with traces in the language. Everything is telling you that, right? Um, and yeah, and places where you would sometimes places where you just get rid of elderly slaves,
Mm.
right? You just get rid of them because they were just they're too costly. Yeah, as they should say, dead weight.
This is so interesting. You would write that, Robert Romano. Thank you very much. I've taken a screenshot of it. But
Yeah.
I have a list here. It says there's in Phillipsburg in St. Martin, in Coutens Bay, British Virgin Islands, in Higgs Beach, Key West in Florida, in ANSE, Anse in Sainte Marguerite in Guadeloupe, in Raisins Claire's Beach in Saint Francois de Guadeloupe. So it's
It's
bodies being
yeah,
washed up everywhere.
and it's not just the bodies that are washed up. It's the mass graves that are in. It's everywhere. Okay, and I
And
had to live
oh, now that we
and
talk about it,
I had to live with that, and especially s-
the Canadian schools, the backyards of the Canadian schools where they
it's just everywhere.
uh
So you can't. It's like there's a point at which you have to turn off your horror and just look, because your horror is not useful.
the horror is not useful. It is not useful. But their denial of it neither.
Forget who people who want to deny can deny. I don't care. I'm not there to convince you. And I'm not there for you to say that they didn't do it. Their ancestors did. Yeah. Um. No. The horror is useful if you're going to see it. If you're going to investigate that and understand the structure of it. The horror is not. You can't be in horror all the time.
And
Yeah.
and I would like to say that as a victim of fear politics, applied, directed, deliberate fear politics projected onto you shows how what fear and horror does to you. And I'm saying this because I got death threats in, part of the work I was doing was conflict analysis, um, in in the service of violence prevention, because the paradigm I was working with states that conflict is a contradiction in intent, in the means, and in the in intent and in the means. So if that's a contradiction in goal pursuit and means utilization, that allows you ahead of time to see whence conflict can, under certain circumstances, metastasize into violence that destroys lives and kills people. And if you do that job very, very intensely, you get to predict which conflicts are metastasizing into violence.
Yeah, that's really useful, and I commend that work that you did. But it
But
is blind to the necropolitical. I
it is,
mean,
it is,
it identifies it as structural violence,
mhm, mhm,
right?
mhm.
But it is often blind to the depth of the necropolitical.
It is blind to it because you, you know what fixed it for me? When you said to me, you lot think it's a mistake that you can fix in the system. You ignore that it's a fixture of the system. It's not a mistake and somebody did something wrong and somebody gave wrong orders and some egregiously violent or egregiously brutal person got in charge and gave orders. It is a fixture of the apparatus to roll over bodies like they've been doing with their caterpillars, to just roll over them, whether they're alive or not, just squash them under the machine, under the state system, and keep it moving and accelerate so that, it's been since 23. It's been 3 years now. They've buried the evidence, right, by burying the vehicles and the cars and whatever remained there under the pretext of some sacred duty to respect the dead. But they buried excuse my language, they buried the fucking evidence. What part of anything
and
is
and
that?
they and they and they cannot stop until they rebuild over it and concrete over it. That's what
and
they're pushing to do.
and they keep
That's what that
accelerating.
that's what when you see Trump's peace, whatever it is,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
That's what they're doing, and they're not, and they know how to do it because they've done it before.
Oh Lord. So
Like,
basically, we have to wait until the Mediterranean spills over, some storms and erosion, and then we're going to find the Gazan babies in the next 25, 30 years,
how
40,
long? It
50
doesn't
years.
matter, and then it's dealt with. This is how terrible this happened, and how do we make sure that never again?
Let me ask you something, Alex.
So we've been never again in, right? So whenever I hear something like never again, I kind of look and I go, okay,
Will be never again in forever.
because I heard that. Where have I heard that one before?
Let me ask you something, Alex. This is a thought that came to me. I didn't give it
Yeah.
enough attention. You see, historians, my historian friends who studied history and the literature in the field has this one position that is peculiar to history. And you could talk to a professor in a history class, and they'll pull out this thing they have, where they say you cannot compare the morality of today with the morality of back in the day. So they'll say back in the day everybody thought it was normal. And as a footnote, I had this dispute with when I was dating a French woman some 25 years ago. And we had this wonderful, beautiful relationship. And one day we were talking about slavery. And she says, "Oh, but back in the day, it was normal to everybody, it was perfectly normal to everybody." And I said, "So, hold on a second. You just said it was normal to everybody." And I said, "But I'm sure it wasn't normal to the enslaved. I'm quite sure they would have told you that it wasn't normal." And she said, "Yes, but you know what I'm talking about." I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." She said, "History. We can't judge the things that happened back then with the way we see the world today." I said, "Yes, I
Uh,
can. Those were
I agree. I agree.
Hold on,
I
hold on, hold on.
agree.
Hold on. Now comes the question. I have to be careful to get to the question. Understanding what she said then, or what historians keep saying because it's part of their paradigm, requires muting the wailing and the crying and the humane pain of the enslaved in the
Mhm.
historiography, which is doesn't make any sense to me. Just because their pains weren't written down doesn't mean their pains weren't the blues,
Okay.
the
Okay.
blues.
So I think that we need to. 'Kay, this is quite sophisticated, right? Um, you see, Europeans will tend to treat issues like that as if they are moral issues. For me, they're not moral issues. Yeah.
Mm,
When you are going through black bodies like they're a machine, seeing their suffering and making sense of it, that's not a moral issue. This is a civilizational issue. And what we have to do at that point is we have to look at how that civilization has been able to process that as a machine. And then to see where those habits persist. I ain't interested in the morality, right? I'm not interested in the ability to say it's okay or it was not. I just want to look at what it is and how it works. Okay. If that makes you uncomfortable and so you need to moralize it, that's your business, ain't mine.
mm,
Right. So what happens is that people come and they need you to perform for them to be comfortable. Well, if they want that, go get a monkey to dance. I'm not doing that. Yeah. So that's my thing. I'm going to look at what happened, how it happened, what was the cost, how many bodies, how they were processed, how were they killed, how were they tortured, how were they rewarded? Because that also has to be because you can't build something on torture. You have to have reward.
mm,
I'm interested, right? And also, I'm interested then in how you justify that, right? Don't bring your morality to the table. I'm not interested.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
You see, the but in this vein, my question then becomes: it seems as though there's a big difference between now, 2026, and let us say 1858 or 1732 or 1635.
Of course, the big differences, but
Hold on. So
mhm.
it looks to me as though intellectuals, people who think about politics and the grand scheme of things, today already have the means while it is happening to say that is egregious and wrong and problematic.
So why you think they didn't have it then?
Oh, they had some, but they squashed them.
Why you think? Look at now. What's happening to people who are trying to talk about what's happening in Gaza? Why
Fear,
you think
fear.
are they being punished?
Yes,
Okay, so you think that what do you think was happening there? Why do you think that our now is so privileged? Who did that to your head? Why couldn't they? No, they knew. And if you look at the writing of people, they write and they knew. And they say it. Some of them will say it.
From the beginning, Las Casas.
Yeah, of course. It's impossible. We're human. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
somehow that imagination that we're somehow so much more enlightened. This tells you no. Look at what's going on in Iran, or what's happening to the Iranians.
And the talk that he's talking,
But
eradicate a
not
civilization
only.
tonight.
I'm not talking about him alone. I'm just talking about
Mm-hmm.
because he is just one part of it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to just point at Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is just dumb. Right. But
Mm-hmm.
he's put in the place to perform. He has a scope. This is not new. Biden did it. They've been doing it since 78, 79. Right? This is not new. The Iranians stopped fighting the Iraqis because the Americans shot down a passenger airline with 200 something people on it. Right? But that's not a mass casualty event. It's a mistake. But they shut it down. Okay? So I'm not interested in in moral theater. It's kabuki. I'm not interested. Yeah. So some people, why are you talking about that? It's so uncomfortable. So what? If you stop it from being uncomfortable, does that stop it from happening?
Mm.
So you're saying that you're okay with it as long as you can't see it. What does that say about what does that say about the machine?
Mm.
Sanda?
Yes.
Don't let people make you perform to their morality. Right?
Don't
As if
make people make you perform to their morality.
yeah, because what they're basically saying is that because it was okay for everybody, it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then if that's the justification, what's happening now that's okay, that's not okay. It's not an accurate way of seeing anything. So just don't engage in that shit. I'm going to call it shit. It's shit, right?
There is a longer comment by Robert. Shall I read it?
Yeah, please. And then I
These
think
great
we need it's a bit late. So
Yeah. These graves are often located on marginal, erosion prone land because enslaved people were denied proper burial grounds, a direct reflection of how plantation economies treated black bodies as disposable. As climate change erodes these coastlines, the exposed remains are forcing a long overdue reckoning with that buried history. Thank you, Robert.
okay. And what I want to and what I say is that especially in Caribbean and Latin American spaces, North American spaces too, but I'm going to talk about Caribbean and Latin American spaces, is that um, the traces of those things are right in our languages, etc. And we deliberately don't confront them, and we have to develop a relationship with that is not performative, because a lot of times what happens is it becomes performative. So you can jump up in indignation and then you feel that assuaging the indignation is action,
Mm-hmm.
is structural action.
Mm-hmm.
And so you end up with the whole thing just returning as a symptom all of the time, right? We have to come to terms with our history. We have to come to terms with our identities, with the structuration of our identities, right? So that you can have one house, one family of mixed blood. Most people in those regions are mixed. One child comes out looking white and is considered white. The other one comes out black and is considered black. They have different opportunities in the society, etc. That if you can't see that kind of thing, I recognize that this is insane and has to be dealt with. Then every now and again, dealing with these things that come up, because there's part of the history that is buried,
Mm-hmm.
but there's part of the history that's present. We have to deal with the present, with the history present with us, because it will lead us to the buried.
Yes.
But if we just focus on the buried, then we only have to deal with it when it's uncovered. And the rest of the time, we can behave as if everything's okay.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes. Yes. It's
All right.
management of consciousness.
Yeah. Okay. It's nearly 12 o'clock, so I think
Mm.
we should wind down. So I would like to just say that um I just like to say one of the next series that we're going to do is going to be about the infrastructure and architecture of sovereignty. Yeah. Um, and
I'm,
that begins to
I'm,
give somebody like Billy Bumbo the tools to come up with some solutions. So I'm looking forward to those solutions, right? And
I'm,
solutions are not absolute. You don't just arrive at a solution that is the panacea. You have to engage with with the messiness of the world and see what works and what doesn't.
yes, and I'm very grateful that we're going there because I think it will. I'm looking forward to how you will present that because sovereignty, of course, is something that the Westphalian system obsesses about centrally, and it may perhaps be the most valuable item in that realm of
Uh,
human endeavor.
well, you know that I don't deal with sovereignty from the perspective of the Westphalians.
That's why I'm looking forward to how we're going to talk about this. It's going to be very interesting. Um, the word always takes me to one particular historical peculiarity, namely that Machiavelli, Machiavelli's abode, his house, wasn't was deliberately spared in World War II by the Germans and by the Allies. And I picked that up in a book.
Machiavelli politically. I mean, have you read Machiavelli?
Well, the point about it is he's sacred both to the Nazis and to the
No, but have you read?
Allies.
But have you read Machiavelli?
I would say yes. I would say yes. I've read him quite deeply,
Because you know
and not
this.
just the Prince, you know.
Yeah,
And
his own.
and okay, the reason I would say I would say yes is because I also read two biographies about him, and they gave a very sort of informed idea of who he was and his life stages and what made him do the things he did and write the way he wrote and his visits to bordels seems to have informed him thoroughly. It looks like he was paying several um well-established prostitutes to get from them information about the powerful men who were paying them for their services.
Okay, so let me say something to you.
Mm.
When you are theorizing about power,
Mm-hmm.
it cannot be idealistic. When you are theorizing about power
Mm.
in service of power, it is not idealistic.
Mm.
Okay, so in power, the most powerful tool is intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
How you get that intelligence? Machiavelli's Machiavelli's methodology and a lot of his study are prostitutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but this is about power. This is not about idea about idealism,
Mm.
and so what you're going to notice is that he's often bang on the button because he's not idealistic.
Well,
He's not saying how this is. He's not saying how this is how it should be. He's saying, look, this is what powerful people do, right? And
and
when
women
they're
told
pushed
him.
with this, and when they're faced with this kind of pressure,
Mm-hmm,
that's what they do.
mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
and so that is very useful politically. Okay,
Indeed, indeed,
all right.
indeed.
Okay, so I'm done.
I'm grateful for these conversations. Today was very conversational, very comfortable in my as I experienced the conversation. And I finally got, it was also cathartic because I got to say out loud that the world
Yeah,
systems analysis approach, it, 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 re- it diminishes the self-importance of all of the, paradigmatic boxes we have to check
mhm.
when we're doing political science. It diminishes it. You feel the stuff evaporate,
Um,
in the larger view of things.
so yeah. Okay, well, Suria's somebody's posting she because she was listening to what I was saying and talking about Machiavelli, and she said
Mm,
sounds like Epstein. And I said this is a completely different category. Epstein sets out to entrap and
yes,
manipulate
yes.
by embroiling you
Mm.
in that which which i- it makes your public persona indefensible, but it also gives you appetites that cannot be fulfilled conventionally. Right? So he's a bit like a drug dealer, right? Machiavelli was he's spying on you, right? This is another category, and that category that is with Epstein does not begin with Epstein,
Mm-hmm.
right? That that emerges at the point of empire, and it's well documented. The secret societies, etc., that result, and how they would break, um, how they would break normativity, um, by exploiting the weak and vulnerable.
How they would, what is the verb you used?
Normativity.
No, you said how they would break.
Guess how they would break normativity?
Do you know the name of the consultancy of Epstein's brother?
No.
It's called the Humpty Dumpty Institute.
Yeah.
It's called the Humpty Dumpty Institute because they're trying to fix that which is broken. Seems to be a sort of
Yeah.
division of labor. The brother breaks and he shows up with the Humpty Dumpty Institute.
Well, no, because um, okay, I don't. This is another thing because you see what here it is that there are interests that need the system to work in a particular way,
Mm-hmm.
but the system will not naturally work like that. So then you have to introduce people into it that produce the sufficient compromise,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they produce the compromise that allows that to happen. Yeah, and then they will have their very peculiar proclivities. Yeah, and and then their ideas. The whole thing about secret societies, etc., and empire that that rises with European empire. Okay, which in order to give a kind of non-church based way of organizing the the desire structure of the human beings in power, right?
Oh
So
man.
so that rises. And I've stayed away from talking about that. I don't want to get involved in that. Okay. But I'm giving you enough so you can do that homework on your own.
Definitely.
I've looked myself. Okay, not you. So the whole thing about shouting about Epstein as if Epstein's abnormal. I'm sorry, he ain't. He's not. Right. This is the price. The price of our type of empire is precisely this. Yeah.
Well.
And if you want to understand it, right, look at the history of the robber barons. Just go read the history and biographies of the robber barons of the United States on Long Island, in their houses on Long Island, and their attitudes to the public.
Yes.
Okay, just go read. Right, it's all there in plain sight. You can't. It's not new. Okay, so what I'm doing here is also protecting your access to somebody like Machiavelli.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Politically, it's important to read Machiavelli.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we
All right.
learn a lot. Thank you so much, Alex. Not holding you any further. We'll see you next week on Dystopia Unmasked when it's time to go into the infrastructure and architecture of sovereignty. And I look forward to that very much.
My apologies for being absent. I missed two. One, my daughter was ill, and then last week it was the Eid.
Mm.
So Eid Mubarak to people who celebrated, and so I kind of took the day off, but I've also acknowledged that I don't actually have a way of telling people about these things,
Mm.
and so I need to sort that out.
All right.
All right.
Thanks indeed.
And
And I just realized that the Humpty Dumpty Institute abbreviates or acronyms as HDI, which is the Human Development Index, and that somehow it's disturbing me now. It's disturbing me. But anyway, the world is as it is.
Yeah. Correct.
Thank you indeed, Alex.
Okay. All right.
Bye to everyone. Bye bye.